Everything you're going to make has to have that API piece, because strategically we're really trying to make it so that we are, better together. So we want our apps to always be better together. So you start with the big strategy. Here's the 4 things. You give some numbers to it if there's a vague number that you can give. And then you say, hey, senior leadership team, VPs, directors, that sort of thing. You say, here's what you've got to communicate down. That means in your department, this. And I would take the time, as a strategist, I would take the time to go through each department, including ones that you don't think of, facilities, a field services team that builds buildings for the company. You say, we need about a third as much building for the rest of our careers here, but we need this and this from these 2 other departments. Now you see how they start to interlock.
This episode is brought to you by Mountain, who want you to know that TV is no longer off limits for B2B brands. Stand out from a competitive market and get your brand seen with Mountain's connected TV platform, Performance TV. With Performance TV, you can find and target your audience down to the granular level, you can meet them in their living room with ads that run during their favorite shows, and you can track campaign performance in real time. Visit mountain.com to learn more.
The smartest marketers from all walks of life, in every industry, talking about the latest trends, opportunities, and challenges. Insights from marketing executives at organizations like National Geographic, IBM, and the Baltimore Ravens. And tips from business authors and experts known around the world. Ways to improve your community's marketing, starting now, right here on the Marketing Smarts Podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carrie O'Shea Gorgon with Marketing Profs, joined by Chris Brogan. He's an executive level strategist and CEO advisor working with companies at the $100 million plus revenue range. The projects he works on with C-level executives involve everything from scouting merger and acquisition opportunities in B2B enterprise spaces, strategic pathing and decision-making, reorganization efforts, and more. Chris is also president of Chris Brogan Media, which offers brand and digital content strategy, as well as business strategy advisory services. He's a sought-after keynote speaker and showrunner of The Backpack Show, and he's the New York Times best-selling author of 9 books and counting. And we're going to talk strategy today. How are you, Chris?
I am so happy to be here talking strategy with you, Carrie.
So I noticed a lot of the work that you've been doing lately is a really high level, like organizational level and even multi-organizational level strategy stuff. And I think a lot of marketers, when they say they're working on strategy, what they're really doing is planning. So what's the difference?
I mean, at the very, very base level of the definition of the word strategy, a strategy is a plan. But with strategy, what you're trying to do is not just, how am I going to make an episode turn out, or what do I have to do today to get through the end of the day? With strategy, you're sort of trying to say, where am I headed? Where am I right now? What needs to be seen out of me? What needs to be kind of understood? Where am I going to go next? And if that doesn't work, where else should I consider going? Like, what if I have to backtrack? What if I have to, say, whoa, that didn't work? How do I take a look at that? So
if you're involved in working on, say, like mergers and acquisitions, and you're bringing on other organizations, and now you have even more moving parts, how does that change the equation? Like when you're looking at strategy, you've got something working at kind of like the parent organization. How do you fold other organizations into it?
Okay. So the company that I'm doing the work with right now, we did 12 acquisitions in 12 months. Hi, Facebook user. We did 12 acquisitions in 12 months. And in every case, what happens is these companies, their founders and most of their staff are invited into the company. Their departments are sort of cross-rolled into each other. And it's a software company. So we take the code and we learn the code and kind of have a on-ramp to sort of learn all the bits of that code. But let's say for marketing departments. So for instance, almost all these companies were their own standalone company with their own marketing department. So we say, hey, great news. We're going to roll your marketing strategy into ours. There's no real debate over it. And then we will ask them questions, hey, what have you been doing? What do you feel is working? Have you had any campaigns that you love to death that you really wish you could bring with to this, this new environment? Because we don't want to, crush someone's years of work or anything either. But then what we say is, so does that match where we're headed? Does that match the language we're using out there in the field? If we're saying this is all going to, feel a lot more seamless in the next little while, and their marketing says we stand out completely from everybody else, then obviously we're going to have to sort of switch that around. And then, there's always the question of what tools, what mediums, what media are we using? Good job, FF4. And what are we, where are we all going? So to sort of cap that one off, once we blend everybody together, once we understand kind of where they've been, we say, here's where we're going. Let's talk about what that looks like for your particular, product. And now that it's part of a platform, let's talk about, how we can get those goals met.
So if we take a step back and look at strategy then from like the standpoint that most marketers are interacting with it, like at the one organization level, I still feel like even there's still a lack of perspective, if you know what I mean. Like they're too close to it almost. It's like, well, we got to figure out this TikTok thing and if it's for us, and we got to keep going on these white papers, and we got to do more thought leadership with our execs and blah, blah, blah. But there's not like hey, let's look at the market and see what people even think about us, and whether that's in line with what we want them to think about us. And how often do you think businesses need to take stock of kind of the bigger picture?
I think quarterly is somewhat reasonable, which sounds like a real fast pace for some people. And for others, they're like, what are you talking about? We do this daily. But I would say that quarterly is reasonable. Again, a lot of what you said back to me, a lot of it was like busy work stuff. It's spreadsheet filling. And it's, I can show somebody at the end of the day in my TPS reports, this is what we did. And I'll say, great. My strategy was that we were going to up the channel, for instance, channel partners. We were going to up that 11%. Show me where your TPS report activities have moved my channel up 11% because my number's not there. One thing that's going to change dramatically with marketing over the while now is marketing has to come with numbers more than ever before. There was a certain sense that, you don't always know, or it's really hard to track this, or it's not always so clear. Well, that marketing either will stop being done, or that marketing will have some new numbers put to it. Without any kind of real sense of growth numbers, it's going to be a lot harder to justify the headcount that you have in your marketing department these days.
So when you're looking then to see what if the news isn't great? Like what if you do this, you take stock and you do this and you realize you're not where you want to be in like a pretty fundamental way. People still think of you as like the old busted legacy CRM, but really you've undertaken to revolutionize everything and everything works great now, but like nobody knows.
Now we're down to absolute basic marketing. So you say, wow, it turns out I have like pretty much no recognition, which is a number that you can track. You can track, is anyone ever talking about you? And if that answer is no, well, geez, we got to get a big awareness campaign going. We've got to really draw people to put us back in the consideration set. You may be, depending on what kind of company, what kind of product, you might have to start doing a bunch of RFP campaigning, where you say, I'm just going to get into a bunch of RFPs, even if I'm not the right product or it's not the right fit. I want my name seen. And so I will eat the effort it takes to fill out RFPs just to get my name in there. By the way, want to talk strategy? There's zero people who anxiously want to fill out an RFP.
No kidding. Request for proposal if this is your first day.
I'm so sorry. Request for proposal document, which means, hey, we kind of think we need a new piece of software and your company may offer that software or whatever. Can you fill out this document that answers our questions our way? And it's never the same way that you've written it twice. So you have to actually copy and do a lot of editing to make it work. So anyway, with strategy, if you're not being seen, then you make a strategy around getting seen. If you're being seen as kind of the old guy, you start executing some plans around how do we make it look like we're not the old guy, and how do we give some people some view. It doesn't change when you're looking at that at the strategic level as much as you're saying, what's our big goal? If our big goal is expand the channel, then what I don't do is I don't start an email campaign for that. If my big goal is, work with my value-added resellers, then I don't go direct to consumer or et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of what not to do in strategy as well. Maybe don't spend your time here. Don't spend your calories here. Really let them loose over here on this other last thing. And that would be the best place.
Then what's the best way to spot opportunities? Like one of the shows that you do is the Backpack Show, which I do with you almost every day. And yesterday we talked to Amanda Holmes, who's the CEO of Chet Holmes International. And she was telling us how she increased leads and conversions upon taking the reins as CEO by like 1,100% just by doing webinars. She took stock of what they were doing. They were all in on radio, all in on TV and print, no new technology. So it was like, hey, let's do some webinars. And it was like a whole new, like she expanded the pie. basically. So what kinds of things can people do to keep an eye out for that stuff when they're like heads down in TPS reports or RFPs and stuff?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing about when one's heads down is that's a choice as well, right? So we can always choose, I'm going to do weekly reviews of where I'm spending my time and my efforts. I'm going to look at my calendar every single week appointment wise and say, does this match what I'm really doing? If I'm handing in XYZ kind of a material to somebody, it better match the real strategy. It better match the real goals. Again, if your goal is if your goal is let's turn it around and make retail stores very successful, then you're probably not going to start opening your own stores. You know what I mean? That would be counter to your strategy. So one has to move. It's almost like laws and cops, right? So laws exist and you shouldn't break the law. Cops exist to enforce the law. When you're out there fighting against a cop and you're like, well, this law is not fair, you're like fighting the wrong person. You fight lawyers to change laws. You fight cops if they execute their duties incorrectly.
Politicians. But yeah.
Yeah, that.
So then let's say you're like a doer at an organization. You're not like a strategy person, but you see an opportunity. What's the best way to kind of gently suggest it to your higher ups if maybe innovation from the ranks is not encouraged?
So I would couch it always with a few things in mind. One was I would always push it for the point of, how this really aligns with our strategy. I want to talk to you about this project I thought might be really great. It ties directly to our strategy, and I'll show you how. And then you walk through kind of what the opportunity is, what how it does or doesn't align to that strategy. And then the next thing you do right after is you say, and I have a pilot proposal in which we don't have to do everything, but we could certainly pilot what it means if we try this out and see if you like the way it looks or feels, or like the way it's going, or if the numbers move in the way you want. The real strategy winner, the real execution winner in a company that's not super big on innovation are little pilot programs. They're delightful.
So Fred Faulkner IV is watching us record this live in the Marketing Prof studio, and he observes it's so important to have key performance indicators that match your goals and track them on the right frequency to see what's moving the needle. It's so true, but a lot of people are kind of like data allergic in a way. They've got a bunch of it. They've got access to a bunch of things. I have seen a real resistance to actually looking at it unless somebody else presents it to them. So how do you overcome this like data aversion and actually look at, even if you have to make it a little smaller, like make the data set smaller, actually look at it in a way that can inform what you're doing?
Well, it's funny. We hate looking at data unless it's our data that's going to prove our point, right? Like if I said to you, hey, I think I really deserve, Mom, I want a new bicycle and I think I deserve it. Here's how I could show you that. Well, then you can collect stuff. Out of the last 64 calendar months, I've done this with my homework and I've done this with whatever. And you said this many years ago that, in a couple of years, it would be a great time to get a bike. Well, I'm just checking in. My data shows I still have no bike. So, you know what I mean? So once you use your data to prove a point, then you start getting more interested in it. And then the other thing is one of the number one things that any company in the world, no matter what your position, C-level or lower, no matter, we all want to contribute to something we think is worthwhile and is doing something for the company. If I said to you, Carrie, your last 7 years haven't been worth it, then you might say, oh no, but I made this show. I made this Marketing Profs podcast and a lot of downloads. A lot of people had a lot of good stuff to say. If you said, I made this show for all this time and no one ever watched it, and I had like 8 views, then you might start to feel really pooey about it. So data is a great tool if it'll help you grow and go somewhere. So I guess in those cases, look for the stuff that proves your point or that you could use to disprove your point and make it so that you can choose a new opinion.
So what does a strategy at the organizational level then actually look like? Like, do you have to have a big voluminous like binder thing and or not? Should it be like a little piece of paper? What does it actually look like and what do people need to be doing?
I think they work best when they're super small. So 2 to 3 pages tops. I think that, even if you could present it in a small slide deck, that's always the best. The next thing is the very next thing you do is you say, so this is where the company feels we're going. We're going to keep expanding this total addressable market. They call it a TAM. We're going to stay inside this TAM. We're going to do this by partnering with these people. We're going to also do this by we're going to change our price points because it turns out our pricing's all over the place and it's ridiculous and no one makes sense. And that's what we're going to do. So you say that like those are our 4 things. Then what we say is, what does that look like for you? And you walk through as many departments as you can at the SLT, like the senior leadership team level, up basically. So you say, you might not explain to every engineer what every desk engineer's job is, but you say, well, in engineering, what that means is you're going to have to work harder on delivering a better API. Every piece of code you write has to come with an API, application programmer interface, which basically is how can you use this software inside the software and how does it talk out to other pieces of software? So everything you're going to make has to have that API piece, because strategically we're really trying to make it so that we are, better together. So we want our apps to always be better together. So you start with the big strategy. Here's the 4 things. You give some numbers to it if there's a vague number that you can give. And then you say, hey, senior leadership team, VPs, directors, that sort of thing, maybe VPs that end there. You say, here's what you've got to communicate down. That means in your department, this. And I would take the time, as a strategist, I would take the time to go through each department, including ones that you don't think of, facilities, a field services team that builds buildings for the company. You say, well, how this is going to impact our teams is because we're doing a lot more remote work, you're going to want to change out the shape and size of our building, but you are going to have to work with our people who do telco or like our corporate IT or whatever, because everyone's going to have shiny new laptops. Everyone's going to have, 500 megabit or more down to their house, blah, 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 blah. See, so that's where strategy works too, is if I say to the guys who run the building, we need about 1/3 as much building for the rest of our careers here, but we need this and this from these 2 other departments. Now you see how they start to interlock, and you bring in project managers usually to say, now let's make this execute. So that was a little wordy, but I hope that got you where you needed to go.
Today's episode is also sponsored by Progress, who want you to try their Sitefinity web content management system. Sitefinity is more than a CMS. It's a content-driven digital experience platform for delivering compelling, multi-channel user experiences. Designed from the ground up with both developers as well as non-technical users in mind, Sitefinity is easy to both manage and scale, so you can create remarkable experiences with a fraction of the time and resources. Unlock billions of digital opportunities right at your fingertips. Learn more at progress.com.
I'm also thinking about positioning in the B2B space and how difficult that is right now. I think we've all seen that diagram of how many vendors there are, like in the space, in marketing automation, even alone. There's just so many. So what does positioning look like when the market is so crowded that you need like a fold out chart to show you how many competitors there are in the space?
So one thing people hate that. They hate seeing 85 options. What dressing would you like on your salad is sometimes the biggest number of numbers we want in an option, right? And we've just proven that so many times that humans just don't like massive numbers of options. So one way to get around that, one way to show differentiation, depending on your sales method, is to just compare a couple places. We're like HubSpot, but we don't take as much time to on-ramp. Or, we're like Zoho, but you'll feel proud showing it off. I don't know if people don't like Zoho. I don't know. So it could be whatever it's going to be, but you really just need to compare yourself to a couple. You can say, well, Salesforce has a CRM and so does HubSpot. The one difference we do is that we know salespeople really hate filling in the tickets on a CRM. So we made it super predictive. So every time you start to type a word, we're going to guess the whole sentence you're going to type. And so after a while, you're going to be so happy because you're going to type a few characters and everything will be done. Right. So that would be the differentiator. Salespeople go, I need that one. That's my CRM, because they hate filling them out. So that's it. How do you find the one thing? So it's never, differentiation is never countering all the products. It's countering the one you think someone would most likely buy that's not yours, or the most known. That's the other one. Most likely buy that's not yours, or the most known. Well, we're not like the number one guy, because they go from there.
One of the things you're known for is taking really good ideas and successful approaches from totally other industries. That's one of the things you're best at. And it's also one of the things that B2B marketers can sometimes resist. They're like, well, that's B2C. That's totally different. So how do you poach ideas and apply them?
Same answer as how do you show innovation in a company that doesn't want it? You do pilot programs. So you could say, um, I actually picked this up from watching kindergarten schools, but here's how it's going to apply to you. And they'll be like, that's stupid. Great. Well, give me 3 months of stupid then. Let's agree to it. And if I make this number go up, then you pay me my fee plus you agree to the next 9 months with me. If the number goes down and it's not what we want, then you pay my fee and I walk away and we're all done, whatever it is. So you can really set some trials up that can give people the comfort level to know that, whatever's next, they're going to either benefit or, cut their losses or something. The other detail about showing other verticals is I say this every single time. I say, why would I follow other marketers to come up with a marketing innovation? They're all in the same trench as us. We have to go outside the trench. We have to look beyond, because that's where something interesting is happening that we went, wait a minute. Platforms like Airbnb, platforms like Uber didn't have anyone to compete with except for cabs and rental car companies. And when they did, they went, wow, we're amazing at this. Lyft comes along, they're suddenly in a category. So their differentiators were harder to do.
So what are you looking at now then? Because you've always got like a couple of things cooking or a couple of things that you've noticed in your travels and all the content you review. And you think it'd be really cool if somebody did this. So what are a couple of those things?
I'll give you a couple of examples. One from the company that I'm doing some work with right now. So work from home is here to stay. Like you'll sort of have to pry that from a lot of people's dead hands at this point. And for great reasons. So if you heard that sentence and you lamented, you're the problem. So what happens is, yes, it's great to have people handy to collaborate, but if you eat, all of that commuting time, and if you stop trying to measure by butt and chair and start trying to measure by output, you're actually going to have a much more productive system. You're going to have a much more quality thing. The only thing that's harder is a little bit of collaboration. So I start looking around going, well, cool, what collaboration tools are out there? What can we do that's cool? This company I'm doing work with over the summer, because of the pandemic, one of our companies built this thing called whiteboards.io. And it's just a whiteboards app, and it works super easy, super flawless, like exactly what you want it to do. And it can connect with some really hardcore technologies. It can Jira and was one of the technologies it can connect with, which is an Atlassian product. And it's going to go to more and more platforms so that you use that wherever you are to have that cool whiteboard feeling, because there just wasn't an app that felt that way. And then when people started making good apps, there are competitive apps to this. When they started making them, they made them their own standalone platform. And they made it like, well, if you want, you can export it to a JPEG. Well, that's not why we use a whiteboard. We don't use a whiteboard so we can screen capture it. We use it because it's a fluid experience, and we want that to stay fluid. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at how does work from home change things. I'm also looking at, especially, pure marketing. I'm looking at how many impacts the pandemic has had. We want things to be more brief. We're watching a lot more video than we are reading. We are needing lots more reminders. We need things to be a lot more instructional. All of that information is not how a lot of our marketing is built right now. For instance, when I say instructional, people want to be handheld led through the process now in a way that they never did before. And I'll top with one last one. We don't want tons of options. With this, you could do whatever. You could collaborate however you want. Instead, you've got to say something really specific. With this, your all hands meeting will be perfect. And here's how, because if you drop to the one thing, then everyone goes, oh, I didn't know I needed something for my all hands meeting. I'm going to check that out. That's great. Thank you. Right. So that's how we need to do it.
It's like that app InstaSquare that all it did was take your photo that wasn't square and make it square so that you could put it in Instagram. Literally all it did. Before Instagram would let you like put other sizes in there.
Exactly, because otherwise you were using something like, God bless them, full on Adobe Photoshop or something for that. And you have to wait for it to start up. You have to wait for it to load. It reads all your licensing. And then all you're just trying to make something square. So imagine you drop something in, you pull it out the other side, it's square already. There's a lot more need for that. Little small bite-sized apps to do the exact thing we need.
As a consultant and coach, how has this changed the way that you market yourself? Like, how do you let people in on what you're doing these days and how you can be of service?
I have a few things. I mean, I have a newsletter that I run, chrisbrogan.com/NL. And when I do that, the whole concept of the newsletter is just to give people ideas every week. It's my best idea every single week. I think newsletters, there's such a rise right now on textual newsletters. It's a big, big thing. Some people are really getting into podcasts. Some people are really into video. And in my mind, what's great about podcast and video is that you could take it with you on dog walks. You could take it with you around the grocery store, those sorts of places, to the gym, if you're back to working out at a gym. And I feel like any kind of place where the media can meet you where you are, that's better than our good old days of things like blogs. I still maintain a blog at chrisbrogan.com, but it's just so much less used than my newsletter, for instance. So there's podcasts, and that's where I hide people.
That's where you hide people.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you look at as your KPIs then for the newsletter? Is it unsubscribes or subscribes or click-throughs or all the above, or like actual purchases of things? What do you?
So I do opens and clicks. I want opens and clicks. So if you are not opening nor clicking anything inside my newsletter, I start you on a path a few months into that activity. So if you stop opening and clicking a few months in, I start you on a new path that says, hey, I just kind of noticed you've been a little quiet lately. If you really want to keep getting this newsletter, just click this and we'll keep sending it to you. But if you take no action, I'm going to dump you in 12 days. And so we prune as much as we can. And the reason we do that is we never want to have a huge newsletter list. We want an active newsletter list so that our open rate is between 40 and 80%. That's nobody's open rate. Everybody's open rate is like 10 to 14%. And ours is massive, purely driven by we knock people off it. Now, people have asked me over and over again, why do you do it that way? And number one answer is on the board, according to Family Feud, is why not? Shut up. But the other answer, the slightly more gentlemanly answer or professional answer, is that I don't want a newsletter for the status of telling you how big my list is. I want a newsletter for the opportunity to sell and serve. And so if you're not buying, there's other places for you.
Well, there are some people who the size of the list really is primarily what matters because they sell sponsorships for the list and stuff. And so that sounds impressive. But then, of course, on the back end, you're going to have less satisfied people because they're going to discover that most of those people are dead weight. So
that's right. Well, see, that's it too. So I can have a sponsor because I have a big list, and they're surely going to react. They're going to react for the first month or so. And then they're going to go, I'm not getting any clicks. Like, I know you got this big old list, but nothing's happening. And I'll be like, I don't know. Well, if 85,000 of them are robots or dead weight, then, why did you sell them? Why did you sell that number? It just makes you a bad marketer. I would much rather be an effective small marketer than an ineffective big marketer.
So here we are still talking about email, right? Like,
yeah,
probably a solid decade or more since people have been saying that email is dead. Is email ever going to die, do you think?
Not in my boat. It is so easy. Email is easy is the mantra, right? It's basically this idea that you can get through to people. The first thing we check in our day is our text messages, then our emails. Almost every single human alive. So first, we look at the notification screen on our phone, texts, emails. That's how we solve them. You know why? Because no one tweets you that they quit. No one tweets you. You get customer service tweets. Don't get me wrong. I spent a whole day and a quarter tweeting how much JetBlue made me mad the other day. But you know what they didn't do? Take action. So what good was it? What good was my Twitter? 330,000 followers watched me tell JetBlue they stunk. And they wrote to me in private, yep, guess we stink. And that was it. No action. So I just don't know that email is ever going to go away. It's the best social network. It is also one difference is when we see something, our brain releases just enough dopamine to say, yep, that went through, saw that. And we somehow give ourselves points at the phrase saw that, not took action. And so email makes us take an action before it goes out of the box. Even if that action's delete, I had an option. Like you had the chance to open, read, and click and take an action.
Before we wrap up, I have to ask you about Clubhouse because I still hear people talking about it. It's not like at the fever pitch it was over the summer, but there's still people like investing lots of hours in it, and I don't get it.
It's a really great platform if you want to emulate mainstream media and very exclusionary practices. It's just us here plus our moderators. We're the only ones. We're the vaunted, right? Like it's just not that important. And I'm still not a fan. I used it probably for a whole month or so midway through, and I dialed in diligently for a bunch of days, just like, I wonder if this will be fun. Wonder if this will be fun. I launched a bunch of my own, still not fun. It's only kind of fun if you run a group long enough that people start coming up semi-regularly, and then only there, it's only fun for the few people who are talking on and moderating it. It's almost never super fun for those listening, unless you're in some sort of space where you're absorbing a ton of free learning and the learning continues to be weighted and valued. There's a lot of poo you've got to slog through to get to the really good stuff, and it's not worth it for me.
So key takeaways then for strategy is that you've got to look at it like quarterly, your big picture organization level strategy. Run pilot projects if you're trying to move innovation at your organization. Email is here to stay, definitely use it. And Clubhouse, maybe don't.
I like it. That's a great wrap up. Better than what I would have given you.
So people should go and sign up for your newsletter, chrisbrogan.com/NL. And of course, they should watch the Backpack Show, which I hear you have a really amazing co-host. So that's at the backpackshow.online. Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on and making me part of the Marketing Profs experience.
Thanks to Mountain for sponsoring this episode of Marketing Smarts. And thanks to Signature Tones for our custom music. You can check them out at signaturetones.com if you need a sonic logo, a jingle, or even a whole custom song. This is Carrie O'Shea Gorgone with Marketing Profs. Thank you for listening here to the very end.